Welcome to the second AP7 broadcast of 2014. I'm Gabriel Hellengren.
I'm Teddy Welch, and we're speaking to you on Wednesday, the 15th of October from the news studio of the American University of Paris.
The housing process for new incoming students to AP this year was anything but smooth for many, as a third-party company, Comforts of Home, were put in charge of accommodating the largest influx of students the university has ever seen. AP7's Carly Abenstein reports.
Crew at Comforts of Home was hard at work long before the students arrived. This is the first year that all incoming students at the American University of Paris were required to use Comforts of Home as their housing provider.
This was the first time that we actually had a significant number of beds in Paris. We had actually prepared to have about 240 students in beds in the fall. And we wound up with closer to 500. AUP had an amazingly successful year bringing its own students in, but also there was a huge number of new students who were associated with USC who came in. For an agency like ours, what that means is that once we realize that we have to supply not 240 beds, but 500 beds, it becomes a little bit of a scramble to get the beds under management.
Check-in proved to be quite hectic for AUP students, but the service with Comforts of Home only improved from there. They moved quickly to ensure all apartments had beds, Wi-Fi, and hot water.
In August here, things pretty much shut down entirely. So not only do locksmiths and manufacturers of other items close for the month, but sometimes our suppliers ran out of basic items like sofas and beds and mattresses. So it was pretty much of a scramble for us to get ready for the sudden arrival of 500 students.
But it wasn't home sweet home for every student. Many found themselves stranded in Paris for the first few days.
When I first got to Paris after a long 9-hour trip on the plane, I came across Comforts of Home and it was a mess. I thought I was living with 4 girls and it ended up being 8, and it felt like a sorority house already. It was my first time being in Paris, and so I was really overwhelmed, and nothing was ready for us. We had beds, but we didn't have bedding. We didn't have hot water or Wi-Fi, so I couldn't get a hold of my parents, and they needed to know where I was. So my first initial experience with Comforts of Home was a little bit rough. However, we were all really pleased with how quickly Comforts of Home fixed different problems in our apartment. Even just yesterday, they brought in another table and refrigerator. They are working hard to improve our living situation.
What matters to us is that people's experience is not overshadowed by a rough couple of days coming in, because this really should be a life-changing experience. Being here for a semester or for a year or for 4 years, this should condition what happens in the rest of your life.
Next year, students might think twice before using Comforts of Home. This is Carly reporting for AUP 7 News.
Hopefully lessons have been learned so these issues will not reoccur in the future.
One can hope.
Now to a more technological mishap. Over 200,000 private photos from the popular smartphone app Snapchat have been publicly released from a third-party website called Snapsave.com. Those who have used the website or sent photos to someone who has may have had their photos released. As a common app for users under 25, some AUP students may have had their accounts compromised. Any users who have used any third-party Snapchat websites or apps are encouraged to change their passwords promptly.
They definitely should. It's not only important to stay safe on Snapchat, but also at sea, as some AUP students found out during the trip to Normandy earlier this month. Teddy, you were there to report.
A group of AUP students were forced to weather the unexpected during an FYI trip to Normandy on October 4th when a surprise storm blew inexperienced catamaranners into a dangerous situation.
The excursion began calmly enough when the group of students woke up early and headed to the Normandy coast. In Honfleur, they went to the butterfly house to see and take pictures of the colorful creatures. After that, they went to the beach where they signed up for quadrubiking, kayaking, or catamaraning.
We thought that catamaraning was just going to be a nice scenic view of Normandy, so we decided to go with the boring option.
But boring is not what these students got. After sliding on their wetsuits and heading out to sea, a surprising turn of events rattled the students.
We capsized. We went out and everything was going fine. It was like the last 10 minutes. The storm decided to hit for dramatic effect. The rain started pouring. Yeah. We could barely see anything in front of us.
Many of the students were completely unfamiliar with sailing or how to navigate a storm. Luckily, no one was hurt and the students didn't let the storm ruin their trip.
But it added to the experience, and I couldn't have asked for a better trip.
This is Teddy Welch, AUP 7 News.
Well, at least everyone enjoyed the trip in the end, and this was not the only eventful trip organized by AP this month. Am I right, Teddy?
Yes, you are. On a more serious note, some AUP students were in The Hague earlier this month while Radovan Karajic's 6-year trial wrapped up at the International Criminal Tribunal. AUP 7's Ariel Delzer was there to report.
The year was 1995. The Bosnian War came to an end at a time when most of our lives had just begun. Over 100,000 human beings were tortured, raped, and killed in the 3-year war, marking the worst case of human atrocity since Hitler and World War II. In 2008, former Bosnian Serbian leader Radovan Karadzic was captured and transferred here to the International Criminal Tribunal at The Hague in the Netherlands. Karadzic has been defending himself for the past 2 years during his 6-year trial, which reached closing arguments October 1st, 2014. Prosecutors are seeking the maximum penalty for Karadzic, which means life imprisonment. Prosecutor Alan Tiger stated to ICTY judges that, after hundreds of witnesses, 80,000 pages of transcripts, and 10,000 exhibits, the policy of ethnic cleansing is finally exposed, and Karadzic was its driving force. Karadzic acknowledges the acts of violence, but denies it being intent of genocide.
This degree of falsifying facts, such bastardized sentences where only portions of sentences given in response are being taken into account. Now, why did I do all of this? If I'm crazy, then the trial chamber has to see whether I am responsible for my actions. If I'm crazy, are 1.5 million Serbs crazy?
161 individuals, including Radovan Karadzic, have been indicted for crimes listed here on the ICTY website. But the question of relevancy to younger generations remains. Why should millennials care, and what does this mean for the future of international human rights?
Well, I don't think you can really understand where you're going unless you understand where you've come from. I know myself personally, I come from a really small country, New Zealand, and these issues seem quite insulated and quite far away.
I think all of us should, the youth more specifically, should be involved in pushing and making sure that people are actually held accountable for their actions.
Verdict of the Karadzic trial will be announced in mid-2015, and until then, the lives of the 100,000 that perished in the Serbo-Bosnian War will lie in the hands of the ICTY. Ariel Delzer, AUP 7 News.
Now back to more campus news, and back to another app in fact. AAP student Clayton Schluter discovered a major privacy flaw in the virtual treasure hunt launched by the school's newly adopted app Olala last week. As students chased each other around campus trying to catch a virtual treasure chest from each other, they were tracked and could be seen as red dots within the app. What was concerning, however, was that students, even if anonymous, continued to be tracked and followed even after they left the set area of the game and after the school day was done. Just minutes after the critique was publicized, it was commented on by Daniel James, a co-founder of the app, who added that students could only be tracked when the app was running and that the app will be updated in order to increase privacy.
Seems like a lot of apps have been having problems recently. Now to some less controversial news, as the traditional AUP Clubs Night was hosted once again this year. Getting involved on campus is a great way for students to make friends and build community here at AUP. Anya Verkamp covered the students' introduction to the many clubs here at AUP.
P7 dropped into the average new student's initiation into AUP Clubs Night, where there's an interest for everybody. Organized by the SGA and Student Leadership Office.
First, Clubsman of the Year.
The event features tables for every club at AUP.
What sort of clubs have you heard about tonight that you're excited about?
Well, I'm actually running for freshman class rep, so I'm really excited for SGA. The yoga club is also really well promoting.
I would say music because I play music. And
the club that I'm most excited about is going to be the AUP Wine Tasting Club.
Okay. Yeah, that's always a really popular one at AUP. Was that the most attractive table?
That was definitely the most attractive table. I had a nice conversation with the woman who said, she made a good point in saying, you can't leave Europe without knowing your wines.
She got that right. Have you heard about any clubs tonight that you didn't know we had?
I didn't know we had a creative writing club. I didn't know there was a sexuality club.
The creative writing club.
The GSA, actually. I was shocked. I walked over and they were like, hey, do you want to join? And I was like, yes. Very overexcited.
There's a lot of different clubs that I had not yet heard about.
A little face-to-face campaigning.
We have free condoms and lollipops, so. Oh, we're definitely doing education. We have sexual health information over here.
Best Buddies is an international volunteer program dedicated to creating friendships with individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities.
And the score was made.
I think so. I think it shows like the scope of activities that we have.
And what do you think brings most people to clubs night?
The food. No.
In the end, it's all about bringing the community together. Even alumni paid a visit.
I think just meeting the new freshmen that came in and kind of getting to know, that AUP really is a community, and seeing that in action is a great memory I'll always have.
Anya Verkamp reporting for AUP7.
Nothing brings people together like some food and a sense of community.
Absolutely. And hopefully everyone there looked up from their plates and joined a club or two.
Yes, so that's it for this week's AUP7 newscast.
Thank you for watching and see you again next week.